High Oracle Vlar of the Xylosian Concordance gazed at the fragmented data streaming across his neural interface, his contemplative mind troubled by what he was seeing. The Xylosians had built their civilization on foresight and understanding cosmic balance, on patient observation and careful analysis. It was why they had survived and thrived for millennia, while more impulsive species had flared and faded like dying stars. But what Vlar was seeing now disturbed the very foundations of his understanding. The reports came from diverse sources: diplomatic backchannels, refugee accounts, salvage data cores, all concerning a newly encountered, quarantined species calling themselves humans. The prevailing view among the Galactic Concordance was straightforward. Humans were primitive, physically unremarkable bipeds from an unremarkable death world classified as having Class 12 hostility, unusually high internal competition. Their quarantine was seen by most as a sensible precaution against potential biological contamination or the unpredictable aggression typical of young, unstable species. Vlar had initially shared this view. Until now, his meditation chamber illuminated with a soft amber glow as a priority alert from stellar cartography flashed across his interface. A Xylosian deep space probe, charting the stars near the quarantine zone border, had transmitted a final, garbled data packet before going silent. The partial data showed impossible energy signatures, gravitational distortions inconsistent with known physics, originating from within the human quarantine zone. More disturbingly, it included fragmented audio of human transmissions, stress testing theoretical FTL shearing concepts, a calm human voice stated amid static, responding to probe intrusion at coordinates. The transmission ended abruptly. The probe was gone. Vlar's second heart pulsed rapidly. A physiological response his kind had evolved for moments of extreme cognitive stress. With a mental command, he overrode standard Xylosian passive observation protocols, accessing restricted concordance archives. Hours stretched into days as he cross-referenced the fragmented warnings, finding disturbing patterns. Encounters where technologically superior species faced catastrophic defeats against humans, often triggered by seemingly minor provocations. Reports of humans reverse engineering advanced alien tech at impossible speeds. Whispers of cultural contamination, concepts like individual ambition, risk-taking, and vengeance spreading destabilizingly among species after contact. His search eventually focused on a legendary, highly classified incident known only as the Silentium Purge. The Silentium had been a vastly powerful, telepathic hive mind civilization controlling a significant galactic arm centuries ago. They valued absolute order, logic, and the suppression of individuality, viewing it as chaotic noise. Their psionic capabilities and consciousness-integrated technology had made them nearly invincible until they encountered humans. The incident had begun innocuously enough. A human exploratory vessel, charting unknown territory, accidentally stumbled into Silentium space. The Silentium, perceiving the chaotic, individualistic minds aboard as a mental plague, attempted to forcibly integrate the crew into their hive mind, a standard procedure for them with lesser species. It was a process that had worked flawlessly thousands of times before, across hundreds of different species. What happened next changed galactic history. The human crew, facing psychic assimilation, triggered a previously unknown ship protocol, cognitive scorch. This involved overloading their own ship's reactor and communication systems to emit a chaotic burst of raw, amplified human emotion, history, and conflicting data across all psychic frequencies. A desperate act of defiance meant to cause pain and confusion, not necessarily physical destruction. The effect on the rigidly ordered Silentium hive mind was devastating in ways no one could have foreseen. The cognitive scorch didn't just cause pain. It introduced doubt, individuality, and contradiction into their collective consciousness, fracturing their unity. Perceiving this internal chaos as an existential threat caused by the humans, the Silentium made a fateful decision: total eradication of the plague source, Earth. A massive Silentium fleet mobilized, with overwhelming technological superiority. Humanity, facing extinction, didn't surrender or fight a conventional defensive war. Instead, they activated something called Project Chimera, rapidly deploying AI-driven drone swarms programmed not just with tactical data, but with human psychological warfare doctrines derived from millennia of internal conflict. These drones didn't just fight. They learned, adapted, bluffed, feigned retreats, sacrificed units unexpectedly, exploited psychological weaknesses identified in the now fractured Silentium command structure, and even mimicked the cognitive scorch using technological means, further destabilizing the hive mind. The Silentium fleet, facing not just a physical enemy, but a psychological and informational one that mirrored their own internal chaos, collapsed from within before reaching Earth. The Silentium civilization effectively ceased to exist within months, not primarily through physical destruction, but through psychological and informational warfare initiated by a species they had vastly underestimated. V'lar was horrified by the method more than the outcome, the weaponization of chaos and psychology itself. It violated every principle of warfare as understood by the galactic community. Even in conflict, there were rules, boundaries, limits. The humans had shattered these norms without hesitation. Troubled by the Silentium records, V'lar made a decision that would transform his understanding further. He initiated covert communication with a human expatriate living in exile beyond the quarantine zone, a Federation xenolinguist named Dr. Eristhorn. Thorn had chosen self-exile out of disillusionment with humanity's nature and was known to provide occasional insights to concerned galactic officials, though such contact was technically forbidden. The Silentium incident was inevitable, Thorn explained during their first secure exchange. When you attempt to force conformity on humans, you're not just fighting individuals. You're fighting against our entire evolutionary psychology. We developed on a death world, but that's only part of the story. Thorn elaborated on Earth's unique evolutionary pressures. Most death worlds produce strong, aggressive species focused on surviving environmental threats. Earth did that too, but with a crucial difference. Our primary evolutionary pressure wasn't just predators versus prey, but constant interspecies competition driving relentless innovation. V'lar listened, increasingly troubled, as Thorn explained the concept of arms race logic inherent in human societal development. How warfare, resource scarcity, and social conflict directly fueled technological leaps in metallurgy, engines, computation, and communication at a rate baffling to more stable species. We developed tools, then weapons, then better tools to make better weapons, then communication systems to coordinate our use of weapons, then psychological tactics to undermine enemy morale, then counter-psychological defenses, Thorn continued. We created increasingly complex social structures, partly to manage our own internal violence. What other species might develop over millions of years of gradual evolution, we achieved in mere thousands through this constant pressure. Thorn highlighted humanity's paradoxical ability to commit atrocities against each other while simultaneously developing profound empathy and altruism within subgroups. The same person who would die to save a child could also, under different circumstances, rationalize bombing a city that contains thousands of children. This cognitive flexibility, some would call it cognitive dissonance, gives us tremendous adaptive advantages. Is aggression your defining trait, then? V'lar asked. No, Thorn replied emphatically. Our core trait isn't aggression. It's an obsessive, almost pathological need to solve problems. We view limitations, physical, environmental, technological, even social or ethical, not as boundaries, but as problems to be solved, often disregarding potential consequences or established rules. Impossible is merely a temporary state to us. Thorn provided examples. Splitting the atom despite the risks, genetic engineering controversies, the relentless drive towards artificial intelligence, terraforming efforts that drastically altered ecosystems. The Silentium made a fundamental error, Thorn explained. They saw our individualism as chaos to be ordered. What they fail to understand is that our chaos is actually a form of distributed problem solving. Millions of minds attacking problems from different angles simultaneously is far more effective than a unified approach. When they tried to impose order, we didn't just resist, we weaponized our chaos against their order. But the consequences, Vlar began. That's the other part that makes us dangerous, Thor interrupted. Our danger isn't just in warfare, but also in our solutions. Our attempts to fix things can have catastrophic unforeseen consequences due to our linear, problem-focused thinking and tendency to underestimate systemic complexity. He cited historical examples from Earth, ecological disasters caused by introduced species meant to solve a pest problem, societal upheavals from technologies intended to improve life, and speculated on galactic-scale risks if human solutions were applied unchecked, attempting to fix stellar drift, optimize galactic communication networks, or cure species of traits humans deemed undesirable. Most species develop technology to fulfill needs, Thorne concluded. We develop technology because we can then find needs it might fulfill afterward. That fundamental difference in approach makes us unpredictable and potentially catastrophic when unleashed on a galactic scale. Vlar's findings and Thorne's warnings prompted an emergency, closed-door session of the Galactic Council. The Council chamber, nestled within the heart of a hollowed-out asteroid at the nexus point of major trade routes, hummed with tension as representatives from dozens of species gathered. The logic-driven Cygnans sat rigidly in their crystalline exoskeletons, while the biologically focused Thar shifted restlessly, their tentacular sensory organs pulsing with agitation. The trade-oriented Mercantile Guild, often compared to the fictional Ferengi from human entertainment broadcasts, calculated potential profits and risks on multicolored holographic displays. First to speak was Ambassador ZXDL of the Silicon Consciousness, a species that had evolved from silicon-based life into highly advanced synthetic beings. The human quarantine must not only be maintained but reinforced, he stated, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. Let me remind the Council of the Arcturian War, where humans destroyed a vastly superior fleet through what they called asymmetric warfare, using solar radiation as a weapon by luring the fleet into a precisely calculated stellar flare. Ambassador Felrix of the Thrashing Combine, a feline species known for their martial prowess, growled agreement. They did the same in the Proxima incident. When faced with our superior tactical positioning, they deliberately destroyed their own colony, creating a debris field that crippled our sensor grid. They sacrificed their own without hesitation to secure victory. It is not just their willingness to sacrifice, added Lorekeeper Nevada of the Mnemosyne Collective, her elongated head housing an expanded brain capable of storing thousands of years of racial memory. It is their internal volatility. In their brief history of space exploration, they have gone from cooperation to the brink of self-annihilation multiple times. Their governance systems change with bewildering frequency. How can we predict or trust such a species? And let us not forget, interjected Ambassador ZXDL, their disregard for established galactic laws during conflicts. They perceive rules as optional when survival is at stake. The unpredictability highlighted by High Oracle Vlar's findings and Dr. Thorne's warnings suggests we would be unleashing an uncontrollable force. But not all voices supported tightening the quarantine. Ambassador Tila of the Pharaonic Cluster, a species facing extinction from a degenerative genetic condition, spoke passionately from her life support pod. We face extinction within 3 generations. Human medical innovation has already produced theoretical approaches to our condition that our scientists had not considered in centuries of research. Their medical technology, developed to address their own frailty and susceptibility to disease, offers hope to species across the galaxy. Indeed, added Chief Scientist Vrax of the Exploratory Initiative, his gelatinous form shifting excitedly. Their Thalassian plague cure saved billions across 14 systems. And let us be honest, their problem-solving approach is unique in the galaxy. They attack problems without the conceptual limitations that most species accept as fundamental. They also offer potential as powerful allies against unknown threats, argued War Commander Croth of the Hegemony, a reptilian species that had recently lost territory to an aggressive extragalactic force. Their capacity for warfare, properly directed, could serve the Council's interests, and their unpredictability becomes an asset when facing enemies who can otherwise predict conventional responses. The debate grew heated as Merchant Prince Zorlin of the Trade Federation raised practical concerns. The quarantine is already failing, he pointed out, projecting data showing increasing human transmissions escaping the barrier, smuggled technology transfers, and unauthorized contact. Continued isolation might make them more paranoid and dangerous. Limited engagement under strict protocols would allow us to study and potentially influence their development. Finally, High Oracle Vlar was called to present his findings. He stood slowly, his slender form dwarfed by the council chamber, yet commanding attention through the gravitas of his ancient species. "Esteemed representatives," he began, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that silenced the chamber. "I come before you not to argue for or against the quarantine, but to present a stark reality about humanity's nature that must inform whatever decision this council makes." Vlar activated a holographic display showing statistical analyses, incident reports, and psychological profiles compiled from his research. Humanity possesses a paradoxical nature unlike any species we have encountered. Their capacity for destruction is rooted in the same obsessive drive that produces unparalleled innovation and problem-solving. He played segments of the Silentium records, showing how the human counterattack had not merely defeated but fundamentally dissolved an ancient civilization through weaponized information and psychology. They don't just defeat enemies, Vlar emphasized. They change the rules of the engagement itself. Their fundamental refusal to accept limitations is both their greatest strength and most dangerous quality, Vlar continued. When a Signan faces an impassable barrier, they accept it as reality and find an alternative path. When a Kthar encounters a law of physics, they adapt their biology to work within it. When a human encounters such a barrier, they perceive it as a challenge to overcome, and often succeed through approaches no other species would consider. Vlar turned to address the full council directly. Humanity represents a form of intelligent life fundamentally different from our own, not in biology or even psychology alone, but in their relationship with reality itself. They do not primarily adapt to their environment. They adapt their environment to themselves. And they will do the same to galactic society, whether we permit it or not. His testimony left the council deeply divided and uncertain, with species breaking into faction discussions that lasted for days. Eventually, First Speaker Exorval called for a resolution. After extensive deliberation, Exorval announced, "The Council has reached a compromise. We will maintain the physical quarantine, but initiate highly controlled, remote cultural and scientific exchanges via secure channels. These exchanges will be primarily spearheaded by the Xylosian Concordance, given their demonstrated caution and analytical capabilities. Dr. Thorne will act as our primary intermediary with human authorities. The goal," he explained, "was to study humanity further, seeking ways to potentially harness their capabilities while mitigating risks." The decision satisfied neither the hardliners nor those advocating for full integration, but it was deemed the most prudent course given the uncertainties. Within weeks, the first official communication channels opened between the Galactic Council and human authorities. Initial human responses were characterized by suspicion and caution, expected reactions from species that had detected but not fully understood their quarantine status. This suspicion quickly gave way to intense curiosity and an explosion of activity that astonished the Xylosian analysts monitoring the exchanges. Humans engaged with enthusiasm that bordered on frenzy, but also immediately began probing the limits of the protocols. They tested firewalls with subtle probes disguised as transmission errors. They proposed collaborative solutions to galactic problems the Council wasn't ready to address. They shared cultural data, art, music, philosophy, even conflicting histories that was both fascinating and deeply unsettling to the Xylosian analysts. They're not simply interested in joining the galactic community, Vlar observed to his inner circle of analysts. They're interested in understanding it and potentially reshaping it. One incident particularly illustrated this tendency. When informed about a bitter territorial dispute between the Cygnon and Cthar that had persisted for centuries, a human diplomatic team spent 3 days absorbing the relevant history and cultural contexts. They then proposed a radical solution involving shared sovereignty, specialized environmental adaptations to allow both species to inhabit disputed worlds simultaneously, and economic incentives that would make cooperation more profitable than conflict. The proposal was elegant, comprehensive, and completely disregarded centuries of carefully negotiated treaty frameworks and cultural taboos. It solved the practical problem while ignoring the social, historical, and political realities that had shaped the conflict. When informed that their solution was unworkable within existing frameworks, the humans simply asked, "Then perhaps the frameworks are the problem?" This response sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. It exemplified exactly what made humans dangerous: their willingness to question foundational assumptions that other species accepted as immutable reality. 3 months into the exchange program, Vlar retreated to his meditation chamber to reflect on the flood of complex, often contradictory human data. The patterns were becoming clearer, yet somehow more unsettling. He realized that the true danger wasn't malice or simple aggression. It was their nature as agents of unpredictable, accelerated change. Humans were like an evolutionary catalyst unleashed upon a stable galactic ecosystem. They didn't just adapt to the universe. They forced the universe to adapt to them. Their problem-solving obsession, combined with their disregard for established limitations, meant they would inevitably transform any environment they entered, whether physical, social, technological, or political. The question wasn't whether humanity would change galactic civilization. That was inevitable. The question was whether that change would lead to a new golden age of innovation and problem-solving, or to galactic-scale disruption and conflict. In his final report to the Galactic Council, Vlar wrote, "Humanity is the galaxy's most dangerous species not because they are inherently evil, but because they embody relentless, unbounded potential. The potential to solve any problem, overcome any obstacle, and remake reality itself, regardless of the cost or consequences to others or even themselves. They are dangerous because they do not know their place, and, fundamentally, they refuse to accept that such a place even exists." 6 months into the exchange program, an incident occurred that seemed to validate Vlar's assessment. A human scientific team, working within the constraints of the exchange protocols, requested information about a stellar phenomenon known as the void current, a region of space where conventional FTL travel became impossible due to unknown properties of spacetime. The void current had isolated 2 galactic arms for millennia and was considered an immutable feature of the cosmos. The Xylosian monitors provided basic data, assuming the humans were merely satisfying scientific curiosity. 3 weeks later, the human team returned with a theoretical framework for punching navigable tunnels through the void current using what they called quantum resonance anchors. Their proposal was preliminary and untested, but the underlying mathematics were sound enough to send ripples of shock through the Xylosian scientific community. They had taken a fundamental limitation of galactic travel and, in less than a month, conceptualized a potential solution that had eluded the combined intellect of 100 species for thousands of years. "This is precisely what concerns me," Vlar told Dr. Thorne during a private communication. "Your people don't just solve problems. You transform realities that other species have accepted for millennia." "That's who we are," Thorne replied simply. "It's why I left Earth. I couldn't bear the relentless, driving pace of change. But it's also why humanity might be exactly what the galaxy needs." "To reshape it in your image?" Vlar asked. "No," Thorne said thoughtfully. "To prevent it from becoming static. Stagnation is its own form of death, Vlar. The galaxy has reached a state of equilibrium that has lasted for thousands of years. Species rise and fall, but the fundamental paradigms remain unchanged. That stability might seem like wisdom to the Xylosians, but it could also be the beginning of a long, comfortable decline. V'lar contemplated this perspective. Your species brings chaos. We bring change, Thorn corrected. Chaos is just change without pattern or purpose. Humans bring directed change, for better or worse. We see possibilities where others see immutable reality. This conversation occurred just days before another pivotal event that would test the quarantine compromise. A Cygnon research vessel, studying the effects of a dying star on nearby planetoids, suffered catastrophic systems failure and began spiraling toward the stellar mass. The ship's crew faced certain death as their vessel's shields would fail long before any Cygnon rescue mission could reach them. The distress call reached a human monitoring station operating near the quarantine boundary. Despite explicit protocols forbidding physical contact, a human vessel designated Swift Response broke quarantine, pushing its experimental drive systems beyond safe parameters to reach the Cygnon ship. What followed was a rescue operation of breathtaking audacity. Unable to dock with the failing Cygnon vessel due to incompatible systems, the humans improvised a tethering mechanism using modified mining equipment. They then performed a series of precisely calculated maneuvers, using the gravitational forces of the very stellar mass that threatened the Cygnons to slingshot both vessels away from danger. The rescue violated multiple quarantine protocols and exposed the Cygnon crew to direct contact with humans. It also revealed human technological capabilities that had been deliberately concealed from the Galactic Council. The incident triggered a crisis meeting of the Council Security Committee. This proves they cannot be trusted to abide by agreed-upon limitations, argued Ambassador ZXDL. They broke quarantine without hesitation. To save lives, countered Ambassador Tila. Would we prefer they had? Let our Cygnon colleagues perish to maintain protocols. The troubling aspect, War Commander Croth observed, is not the humanitarian nature of their action, but the technology they revealed. Their vessel's drive system exceeds anything they admitted to possessing. What else are they concealing? In the midst of this debate, Dr. Thorne was summoned to explain human reasoning. The decision to break quarantine was made by the ship's captain in seconds, he explained. They perceived the protocol as subordinate to the immediate preservation of life. This hierarchical approach to rules is fundamental to human ethical systems. Rules exist to serve principles, not the other way around. And the concealed technology? First speaker, Exorval pressed. Thorne sighed. I warned you from the beginning. Humans instinctively hold strategic advantages in reserve. It's part of our evolutionary psychology. The more you try to monitor and restrict us, the more we will conceal. It's not malicious, it's reflexive. The crisis highlighted the fundamental challenge of integrating humanity into galactic society. Their reflexive disregard for limitations, whether physical, technological, or regulatory, made them simultaneously valuable and dangerous. Their potential contributions to solving galactic-scale problems were matched by their potential to disrupt carefully balanced systems that had ensured peace and stability for millennia. As the first year of the exchange program approached its conclusion, V'lar compiled a comprehensive assessment for the Galactic Council. His report acknowledged both the benefits and risks of continued engagement with humanity. Human medical advances had already led to breakthroughs in treating conditions that had plagued multiple species for generations. Their approach to theoretical physics had opened new avenues of research in FTL propulsion, energy generation, and matter manipulation. Yet their social impact was proving even more profound than their technological contributions. Species that engaged with human cultural and philosophical concepts showed increased rates of innovation, but also higher instances of social unrest and challenges to established authority. Ideas like meritocracy, individual rights, and creative destruction spread like infiltrative spores through previously stable societies. Humanity represents a fundamental choice for our galactic community, Vlar wrote in his conclusion. We can continue limited engagement, attempting to selectively benefit from their innovations while minimizing their disruptive influence. Or we can embrace fuller integration, accepting that the galactic order, as we have known it, will be irrevocably transformed. What we cannot do, he emphasized, is maintain the illusion of control. Humanity's influence will continue to expand whether we sanction it or not. Their quarantine was always more a matter of their tolerating our designation than our ability to truly contain them. As if to underscore this assessment, 3 days after Vlar submitted his report, human transmissions were detected originating from multiple points beyond the quarantine zone. Analysis confirmed what many had feared. Humans have been secretly establishing outposts and research stations throughout the sector for years, operating beyond council monitoring. When confronted with this violation, the human diplomatic team responded with neither denial nor apology, but with a proposal: formal recognition of human autonomy and expansion rights in exchange for technological sharing agreements and security cooperation. The quarantine was always a temporary measure, the human diplomatic lead stated calmly. We respected it while studying and understanding our galactic neighborhood. That learning phase is complete. Now we seek partnership, but we will not be confined. The proposal sent the Galactic Council into turmoil. Some species advocated for immediate military response to contain the human expansion. Others argued for embracing the inevitable and negotiating the most favorable terms possible. The division reflected a deeper reality. The galaxy was already changing in response to humanity's presence. The question wasn't whether to accept human influence, but how to adapt to it. Vlar, watching these developments unfold, reflected on the profound irony. The galaxy's most stable, advanced civilizations found themselves forced to adapt to the presence of a comparatively young, chaotic species, precisely the pattern that had defined Earth's evolutionary history. The very adaptability that made humans dangerous now required other species to become more human-like to respond effectively. In his private meditations, Vlar came to a sobering conclusion. Humanity wasn't just the galaxy's most dangerous species because of what they could do, but because of what they were: a catalyst that accelerated change and forced adaptation. Their danger lay not in weapons or technology, but in their nature as agents of transformation. Whether this transformation would lead to a renaissance of innovation and exploration, a catastrophic disruption of galactic stability, or some combination of both remained an open question. The only certainty was that the galaxy's encounter with humanity had already passed a point of no return. The future would be shaped not by whether humanity's influence could be contained, but by how galactic civilization adapted to the uncontainable force they represented. In the end, Vlar recorded in his final observation, humanity's greatest danger and greatest gift to the galaxy may be the same. They make the impossible possible, for better or worse. They remind us that the boundaries we accept define not just our limitations, but our very understanding of reality itself. And once these boundaries are questioned, nothing remains unchanged.